the Resilient Advisor Podcast, the show for high-performing financial advisors. We bring you the best practices of the industry's top performers so that you can build resilience in your business and your personal life.
This episode is part of the How I Serve series on the Resilient Advisor Podcast, where I bring you some of the industry's most successful financial advisors, and they share their story of how they serve their clients. Joining me today is Christopher Music. Christopher is known as the Financial Prosperity Coach. He is a 20-plus year industry veteran of the financial planning business. He is a best-selling author, a financial expert, and has been seen on NBC, CBS, ABC, Fox, The Brian Tracy Show. He's been featured in Forbes, Newsweek, and has been on stage with one of my favorites, Grant Cardone, at one of his 10X seminars. Christopher, thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Well, thanks, Jay. I'm really glad to be here.
You have built several fantastic brands and multiple value propositions for your clients. Let's go deep on a couple of them. One of my favorites is the Econologics and the Econologics Institute. Could you peel back the cover for our listeners and tell us a little bit about both of those?
Well, Econologics grew out of the summation of my experience in about 20 years of financial planning experience. And let's take a look at the derivation of the word. I think that'll help explain a lot. I studied 5,000 years of human history, from the ancient Sumerian culture to the Egyptians and the Greeks and the Romans, through classical economists of Europe, 7 world major religions, statesmen, academic philosophers, and distilled down all these basic prosperity principles, these rules and laws that have always been true in all times and places. Because obviously today we're dealing with a lot of arbitrary systems, a lot of complexity. How do we get down to the simplicities? And in doing all that research, Econologics actually comes from the ancient Greek. Economy is the first definition of economy is management of a household. And that's actually from the Greek word oikonomos. Logi means study of. Ecos is practices and skills. So Econologics is literally the study and the practices and skills of the financial management of a household, which is what financial planning has as its purpose and intention. Now, this all was born out of the Great Recession of 2008, 2009, because as a business consultant and financial planning practitioner for many years, I realized that a lot of small business owners and people were getting hurt. They're not able to translate that wealth into their household and protect the wealth once it was in their household by following traditional, quote unquote, financial planning advice. Investing heavily in the stock market, and all kinds of other strategies that add variables. Now, with any science, because I view Econologics as kind of like the modern science of financial planning. It's any science we're going to have in our field is going to be imprecise. And the reason why it will always be imprecise is because the natural laws of money are precise. Spend less than you make and you will have money left over. That's a law that's always true in all times and places. Now, you cannot do that when we are living in systems that violate natural laws. For example, accounting. When you have 10 accountants have 10 different opinions on what a balance sheet or a tax return would look like. Banking, the way it's set up. Our investment theories. We're looking at taxation. That's probably one of the most arbitrary systems of all. When you try to look at these systems, then how does one navigate them as cleanly and efficiently as possible? Because those are the ultimate of complex and not simple. So how do we break it all down so that we can confidently achieve predictable and consistent results in a household, which is the entity to which Econologics is applied? How do we get that? And the only way we can do that is by eliminating variables. So if you eliminate all the variables, which is basically a scientific method, and create, through logic and engineering, a process that gets a consistent result every time, then all of a sudden we have something that can be confidently promoted because every time you apply it as it is, you can observe results. Now, one of the unique things about Econologics, because with any science, you have to measure it, and you have to measure it objectively. Rates of return on a mutual fund is not the correct measurement. Why? Because returns can only be defined after you define risk. And most investors I know of do not quantify risk like they quantify return. So it's reversed sequence, and that creates a problem. So I had to come up with 18 different tools on how to correctly measure the perfect, or quote unquote perfect functioning of a household financially. What would be the ideal condition or experience that those members of that household would have financially, and then measure it correctly. So we have to begin with the end in mind, and that's what we do with Econologics, is begin with the optimum solution, and then work backwards to try to eliminate all the variables that would stand in the way of creating a predictable result. And of course, that ended up becoming a whole subject. It's about 5 books of material, plus seminars and all kinds of ongoing research.
All through the Institute.
Yes, all through the Institute. Yeah, Econologics Financial Advisors is my RIA firm insurance agency that implements the system to our clients, and then the Institute is the one that publishes and researches, and that's where I spend obviously most of my time, making it so that it is easy to understand and deliver to the public.
All right, and could you give listeners an idea of what one of those 18 variables is and how you apply it to the plan from a high level?
As far as like the measurement?
Correct.
Measurements? Okay. Well, for example, I have a tool that I call the Financial Prosperity Index. And the Financial Prosperity Index is 100 questions. And the client answers the questions. And from that self-assessment, we can basically analyze 9 different areas of their financial life, because all your financial transactions actually break down to 9 different areas. And we can immediately get a snapshot of the condition of that area. The best way to look at it is like the human body. The human body is an organism. It operates synergistically as a result of systems. Systems are musculoskeletal, circulatory, respiratory, endocrine, digestive, and so on. And these systems are then working together to create the health of the body. Now, if you're a healthcare professional and you're trained in what the optimum function is of all those systems, then you can immediately observe and diagnose departures from that ideal functioning. So then you can properly diagnose, and you have a protocol to then treat to improve the quality of the system in the body and the overall health of the organism. Well, this is exactly the same thing. All we're doing is we're recognizing departures from what would be ideal in that particular system, and then being able to have a protocol already worked out that resolves the risk and the unpredictability and danger that is in that particular departure, so that we create and continually create a more optimum financial condition for that household.
So what is the index measuring? Is it their overall position versus where they want to be? Right.
So when you get a concept of what ideal functioning would be, then this 100-question questionnaire basically shows us where that client is compared to the ideal. Now, the way I scored it was like a credit score. Everybody knows their credit score. 850 is perfect, and they know A credit, B credit. Well, of course, I matched that for immediate positioning so that one could get an idea of what their overall financial prosperity condition is. And what it does beautifully is that it puts a big spotlight on the, if you're looking at building a foundation for a house, you have bricks and mortar, right? So it immediately puts a spotlight on the missing bricks and the missing mortar in that foundation. So then you can actually objectively look at it, create the solutions so that the client has a stronger foundation, and then you can build wealth from that point at a much higher level of safety and predictability.
I get it. That's fantastic. Let's shift gears to another value proposition you have, or brand is probably the better term here, and this is the private practice millionaires that you focus on. Could you define what that is, and then talk about how you serve them?
Okay, so the private practice millionaire is a basic model that is part of Econologics, but it extends. It's actually Econologics as it applies to a private practice professional. Now, private practice is a licensed professional who is in their own firm rather than working as an associate for someone else or for a corporation. This is your, it could be an independent financial advisor. It could be your dentist down the street, the veterinarian that has their shingle out by the road. That is the public that my firm serves. And I developed the private practice millionaire because what is it? A millionaire. A millionaire, well, someone who has $1 million or more. Well, interestingly enough, most people don't consider themselves millionaires because millionaire has a connotation of having wealth and substance. And most professionals I know are kind of slugging it out every day trying to make it and don't realize the value that they have in their business. And more importantly, the value that they create by improving their own ability, gaining specialized knowledge and applying that specialized knowledge to get results, whether it's better techniques, marketing, finance, public relations, strategic planning, sales, all these different functions that go into a business. So the private practice millionaire model essentially focuses on 3 roles. And everybody who's in this business understands I'm one myself. So this plan is the one I wrote for me. I just happen to share it for everybody. But you have 3 roles. You have that of the practitioner. The practitioner is the licensed person who delivers the quality service to the public. This is, it could be a dentist who provides, cleaned, improved teeth. The financial advisor who delivers insurance products or financial products or advice to get a better result for the client. The accountant having a compliant tax return. All these different products. That's what the practitioner does. Now, there are 2 other roles that you have to know and do if you're in private practice and you're going to be successful doing it. The first one is the executive. The executive is the one, it comes from the Latin word exequi, which means to take to an end or to complete. And executives get things done. And executive functions in a private practice would be strategic planning. They would be sales and marketing, human resources, running the finances, quality control, delivery of the services, public relations. And every business has all those functions. You cannot be successful if any one of those functions is missing. The rub is that you have to learn how to do it, because if you want to be a practitioner and give advice all day, that's great. But you're only going to get paid what you would pay an associate to do that work. So if you're going to be in private practice, you got to make the decision whether you want to be a practitioner or you want to be an executive. Because if you try to do both of those, you'll limit your income at a pretty low level and burn yourself to a crisp.
Okay. Which
then leads to role number 3, and that's the owner. And as an owner, you have 2 fundamental functions. The first one is to be that entrepreneur, to be the leader and the guide of your business, the establishment of it, and what it means to the public and to your clients, your staff, your family, and to you. That's that mission, that vision, that drive and purpose of why you are doing what you're doing, and imbuing that all throughout your organization, so that people are really digging into what you're doing. The second function is that being a professional investor. And a professional investor is, just to simplify, you all know this because you're in the business, is you have to be able to identify and manage risk, first and foremost, and then create return expectations for your business. You do this every day when you analyze stocks or whatever, but I'm talking about your particular business. And the one thing that practice owners really need to understand as owners is that you are building the business for someone else. When you have that cognition that you're creating your business for someone else, you will realize at that point that your business will last longer than you will. And when you're done with it, whatever age, whatever form of health you're in, whatever the case may be, you have built something that someone else will come in and say, man, that is a very valuable asset, and I want to exchange my money for it so that you as the owner or the previous owner can get the value of your life's work out of that practice. And unfortunately, most practices basically just close down. So those are the three roles, and you really have to embrace and get results in all three areas if you really want to make a successful experience in private practice.
So you had mentioned that the practitioner and the executive needed to be separate people in those roles. Obviously, the owner...
Eventually, yeah.
Eventually, okay. But you, as far as the owner role, you could be a technician and an owner, an executive and an owner. Am I understanding the model correctly?
Right. You are, because if you look at growth, at the very beginning, you're wearing all three hats. You're doing everything. And eventually, you have to determine for yourself, you have to know yourself. So you're either one of two types. You're that person, if you fast forwarded to age 60 and I'm going to work only 2 days a week, what would you prefer to do? Would you prefer to sit down with clients one-on-one and help them work out their life goals and plans and make recommendations and stuff like that? Or would you be more interested in doing executive functions like marketing, like managing staff and getting them working into the business, maybe expanding to a new location or whatever? You have to know yourself. Either one or the other that's going to outweigh. Well, if you're a practitioner, it's like, oh my gosh, I just love meeting clients and doing all that stuff. Fantastic. Then you have to, at some point, get a CEO or an office manager for your organization and push all the executive functions to them. So you can operate as an owner practitioner and not get burned out. If you're the executive, you're just like, oh my gosh, I love marketing and I really enjoy the finances and handling public relations. Okay, good. Then you should not be meeting clients one-on-one. You really shouldn't be, because you're gonna basically thwart your own growth at a very high level, especially as you try to take on more clients. So at that point, you hire and train associates, and you act as the owner executive in that business. And eventually, as we fast forward, if you're really good, you will turn over that remaining function to other people. And you'll just be the owner and have all those functions done by other people, which obviously ultimately frees up your time and attention to go pursue other goals. And I think that's a goal for every practice owner, the option to be in the practice, not the requirement to be in it to make it run.
Yeah, well said, Christopher. In fact, if you look at some of the trends now, among these emerging RIAs that are growing fast, they're bringing on folks to serve in that CEO role so they can stay and continue to be the practitioner, because that's why they got in the business and that's what they're good at. And then I know
that's what they love, yeah.
Yep. And I see in my consulting business, RIAs that could get to the next level, but they're held back because the person who started the practice wants to be both the technician and the executive. So I think your model's a fantastic framework for somebody to use if they want to get to the next level, whether it's an RIA or it sounds like it'll also work in a dental practice or a veterinary practice. Is that correct?
Totally. It's universal. It's actually universal to all practices. If you really look at all the functions and the requirement to make a successful practice, it's part of that model. It's a standard model.
Excellent. All right. So when I first came across your work, one of the things I found was a YouTube video of you presenting at one of Grant Cardone's 10X seminars. And you gave a presentation where you talked about some of the things we've talked about on this podcast, but you also mentioned some maxims that a private practice millionaire lives by and works by. And I thought they were really powerful. And listeners, I'm going to have links to that presentation that's on YouTube. I highly recommend watching it. But, what are some of your favorite maxims that you see high-functioning private practice millionaires engage with?
Well, let's define maxims so everybody knows what it is. A maxim is a rule of thumb or a general principle of conduct. It's something that you do or guides behavior. And I got these 10 maxims because, I wanted to create a framework by which any person in private practice could be successful. Now, just to kind of back up real quick, I work with chiropractors, dentists, veterinarians, and the majority of people I come across are just having a really tough time in private practice. They want to be practitioners, technicians, and they just struggle with being an owner and executive. Why? Because you're not trained on it at all, basically anywhere, unless you go out there in the industry and find a coach or a consultant that can help you. So I wanted to create a basic framework that was broad enough to encompass this whole endeavor. And the first one, I will seek to deliver the highest quality service of which I'm capable. Now, look, what does that mean, the highest quality service? Let's just take that alone. It does not mean that you market yourself as I get the highest return of investments in my market. Because if you've been in this business long enough, that's going to humble you at some point. No, the highest quality service, it will, man.
Oh, I know.
Yeah. I've been through four bear markets, and they get worse every time.
That's right.
Because as I get older, it's like, oh my God, again?
And it's been a while, so we know what's coming.
It's been a while. We're all hunkering down. So anyway, but what is the highest quality service? Okay. There's one thing I want to tell you too about this practitioner, executive, and owner function that relates to this. You're going to go to financial advisor conferences, conventions, whatever. You're going to learn the newest, the next big thing, the newest mousetrap, whatever it is. And we're sales professionals. Because we end up selling products and services as part of our overall experience with that client. Highest quality service, in my opinion, is the management of client expectations and the fulfillment of an improved financial condition for that household. Improved financial condition. Now, it obviously takes into consideration investment return, risk management, and obviously take into consideration legal documents, tax management, and debt, the elimination thereof, or management thereof, and education, making the client knowledgeable about what they're doing so they feel in control and at cause. So that's really, to me, the highest quality service. And you are only going to make so much more money. Well, let me put it this way. Do not be deluded that you're going to go to a conference and learn how to do a new technical thing, and you're going to make more money doing that technical thing. You won't, because the public has no idea what we do. But if you learn how to be an executive, learn how to manage people, learn how to manage growth, learn how to be an owner, an executive, in other words, that is where your future income is going to come from. Obviously, you got to keep your saw sharpened as a practitioner. But if you get really, really good, really good at what it is you do and clearly communicate that to the public, that allows you then to deliver that highest quality service to the public.
Requires focus, right?
Always. These are things you all know, okay? Now, one more thing, too. Let's talk about number 3. I will treat my professional practice as an investment, not merely as a place to work. Most professionals get into it because they want autonomy, they want freedom to do their own schedule, that kind of thing. But again, we have to view our business as an investment and create enterprise value in that business. As you go through the natural progression of business growth, you're going to come up against the reality that you need to turn these functions over to somebody else before you burn yourself out to death. And to frame it and make it so you can do that on your terms for the amount you want. So one of the things that I've innovated is practice value maximization and transition planning. Okay, how do we treat our practice as our number one retirement asset, like a 401k or an IRA or a mutual fund? How do we manage that business as a retirement planning asset with a predictable liquidation event on the back end that's favorable to our goals? So we have to really figure out what that is. I don't care if you're 18 years old just getting into the business. We got to figure out that end game for all of us, so that, think about the responsibility we have for that. Mm-hmm. We have clients that seek consistency and continuity. We have we have employees that want that. We have the community that becomes familiar with the signage that you have out by the road or whatever the case may be for you. These become cultural endeavors, especially when we've been in business for 20, 30, 40 years. So it's imperative that we start thinking in terms of our own transition planning. And that's why that's part of this private practice millionaire model.
Christopher, this has been incredibly, incredibly valuable. I appreciate you sharing what you do. The way you serve your clients is operating at a whole nother level. How could listeners find out more information about you and your businesses?
Well, probably the best thing to do would be to go to Econologics.com. Econologics, Econologics.com. That's my company website, and you can reach out and contact me there. You can also have my office phone number, which is 727-588-1540. Or you can also you can find me on social media. I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, Christopher Music. It's kind of a name that people seem to remember. So reach out and connect with me. I'm always interested in my peers in this industry, those that are especially interested in providing, superlative results for their clients, and who are innovative thinkers pushing our profession into the next level.
I'll have links to all of that in the show notes. Christopher, thanks for coming on.